Welcome to Dark Knight Films Reviews and another Versus Night. Tonight, I will be comparing Prom Night from 2008 versus When a Stranger Calls from 2006. So, before we get started on this one, I just want to point out that both of these films came into this area where certain films at this time period were doing slasher films right. They were doing them R-rated, putting in as much blood and gore and, real fun stuff that all of us horror fans really like to see. And then certain other ones were churning out these muted and sedated PG-13 masterpieces. And that's where these two come into play. I mean, you had films like Rob Zombie's Halloween. You had Marcus Nespel's Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Friday the 13th. You had Patrick Lussière's My Bloody Valentine. All of these films took an R-rated approach to their films, and they were successful because of it. There was no need for other filmmakers to try and make a slasher film, or even a horror film in general, PG-13 to appeal to younger audiences. If the kids want to see these movies and they're R-rated, the parents, if they really are into horror themselves, they're going to let their kids go see it anyway. They're going to take them to see it. And there's nothing against a parent letting their kid come in to see an R-rated film. So there was no real reason to do this PG-13 and make these really badly, anytime there's a murder or kill sequence goes on, there's nothing to it really. It just cuts away, or it's just so bloodless and it's just so badly done that it's like, what the fuck is this? And these two films are prime examples of that. All right, now let's get to, with me noting that, let's get to some of the elements in this. And I'll give you my full thoughts on this. So let's get started on this with the leads. Prom Night stars Brittany Snow, and When a Stranger Calls stars Camilla Bell. Now, Brittany Snow's not bad in Prom Night. She's really good, and I like the little backstory for her, where her mother was killed by this killer, and now she's going to see a psychiatrist because of what she witnessed with this murder right there in front of her. That's an interesting thing to put in a slasher film. And her performance is pretty good in this. Camilla Bell in When a Stranger Calls, that film is just so weird because it takes that first 25 minutes of the original When a Stranger Calls, and it expands it out for an hour and a half. And it didn't need to be done. So the dragging out of it just makes the things that Camilla's character is going through, they aren't as interesting as they were for the original film with Carol Kane in there. Because, she's enduring this stuff for 25 minutes. It's intense. It gets to a point where it by the end of it, it ends in 25 minutes, and then you get to the just of the other story, elements of the film. This one, it tries to, like I said, expand that 20 minutes out and I know I should be doing this on direction or something, but I'm not doing story for this versus night, so I'm going to talk about the story a little bit for these characters here. But in my opinion, I think Brittany Snow in Prom Night is better than Camilla Bell in When a Stranger Calls. So I'm going to give this one to Prom Night. All right, so let's move on to the killers. Prom Night has Jonathan Shake as its killer. When a Stranger Calls has Tommy Flanagan, and the voice on the phone is Lance Henriksen. So he's got two playing this character physically during any of the moments where the killer is shown. It's Tommy Flanagan, and whenever it's the voice on the phone talking to Camilla, it is Lance Henriksen. And that's pretty cool for that, because, I mean, Lance Henriksen's got this amazing voice and just sounds so badass. So that was a good idea, because I like Tommy Flanagan, but I think his voice talking to her on that phone might have been too comical, because he's got that Irish accent to his normal talk. So him talking on that phone, like, you know, and everything might have come off a little more comical than creepy. And Lance Henriksen made it really creepy. I will give the film credit for that. Whereas Jonathan Shake as the killer in Prom Night, early in the film, like I said, he kills Brittany's character's mother. And then he, returns. He escapes and returns to the scene of the crime and ends up trying to kill more people, including trying to get to Brittany's character and kill her as well. Quite an interesting thing. I mean, if it would have had some really cool, blood and gore in it and everything, good kills, and good kill designs, which it did not have. Jonathan Shake's killer might have been really, really good in this. But as it turns out, even though I didn't like Camilla's character as much, because it's dragging out a storyline that I didn't think was necessary to drag out to begin with, the combination of Tommy Flanagan and Lance Henriksen as this stranger calling on the phone was pretty effective. So I'm going to give this one to When a Stranger Calls. All right, so let's move on to supporting. The supporting cast of Prom Night consists of Idris Elba, Ming-Na Wen, Lyndon Ashby, Scott Porter, Jessica Stroop, Dana Davis, and Kellen Lutz. The supporting cast on When a Stranger Calls consists of Katie Cassidy, Tessa Thompson, Brian Garrity, Clark Gregg, Derek DeLint, Kate Jennings Grant, and Steve Easton. Now, both of these films have pretty amazing casts now that you're looking at them now. Back when they were initially made, nobody knew a lot of these people. Idris Elba was not Idris Elba at this point. The only one that probably was Ming-Na Wen. She was the biggest one in Prom Night. And maybe Lyndon Ashby was one. But pretty much the rest of those were not really bigger names and known names in there at the time. But when you're looking at it now, I mean, some of them, ended up becoming pretty big. Like, for instance, When a Stranger Calls, you got Katie Cassidy, you got Tessa Thompson, You got Clark Gregg, and you got Steve Easton. You got all these really, really good actors in here playing these roles. And this one's a really tough one because I really love, all of the actors that are in the supporting roles, for the most part. Idris Elba and Ming-Na Wen and Lyndon Ashby, man, that is. Then Katie Cassidy, Tessa Thompson, Clark Gregg. Shit. I think I'm going to give this one to Prom Night, though, just because, Idris Elba's detective character was very interesting in there. I just wish that it would have been an R-rated, true slasher film for him to really stand out as this heroic detective character that is in this film. Because it really would have made him a much better character if we were seeing the bloodshed actually happen instead of these cutaway kills that happen in Prom Night. All right, so let's move on to direction. Prom Night was directed by Nelson McCormick. When a Stranger Calls was directed by Simon West. I'm going to try not to criticize this because of the story. I'm going to just work on focusing on how well these two guys directed the film. I'm not going to focus on the story. I've did enough of that for the rest of the stuff. So Nelson McCormick does a pretty good job directing Prom Night. Like I said, he sets up those sequences with Ming-Na Wen's psychiatrist character talking to Brittany Snow. You get these really good little moments with those two. And Jonathan Shake's moments in there are directed to really be creepy. If we would have saw the kills, it would have made it a lot better. Whereas Simon West, he doesn't get a lot of really good moments for real good tension in this film because there's a lot of false scare stuff where Camilla is being called by her boyfriend playing pranks on her and shit. And, and then and it drags out for so long before you actually do start getting Lance Henriksen on the phone. And, the suspense moments of the film start. And it being dragged out to an hour and a half, it just makes those moments in there not as tension-filled. It would be like taking that opening moment in Scream where Casey Becker, played by Drew Barrymore, being called by Ghostface and you're dragging it out to a whole film. It would get redundant and boring after a while. And I think that's what happens with When a Stranger Calls. As much as I like Tommy Flanagan and the voice of Lance Henriksen on the phone, plus, I think the whole idea of them making the whole opening of When a Stranger Calls, that first 25 minutes, a feature film, and then planning to take the second half of the original film and make a sequel out of it, I thought that was just stupid planning on their part. And as it turned out, they never did make the sequel anyway. I just think the overall idea of Prom Night by Nelson McCormick, I think he put together a better slasher-centric film, even though every time the kill happens, it pisses you off because he cuts away. He doesn't show the bloodshed. So I'm going to go with Prom Night on this one. So Um, Final winner on this one ends up being Prom Night with a score of 3-1. And I wasn't expecting to go there, but to be honest, neither one of these films is a favorite of mine. I don't really care for either one of these films. Like I said, I think the storyline for Prom Night could have been very, very interesting had it been an R-rated slasher film. When a Stranger Calls, I don't know if even if it was R-rated, if it would save it. Because like I said, it is dragging out a 25-minute segment into an hour and a half, and it just does not work at all for me. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with my assessment for these two films? Do you disagree? Let me know in those comments down below. And as usual, if you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to click that bell icon so you can be notified about future videos just like this one. And while you're by the subscribe button, click that join button and become a Dark Knight fan. Well, that's the end of another Versus Night. If you missed last week's Versus Night, check out the link up in here. Or if you've missed any of the other Versus Nights, check out our playlist and see anything that you have missed.